April 1945, the war was ending, but for these captured German women, the real shock wasn't defeat, it was the unexpected kindness shown by the very men they'd been taught to fear. They were enemies of America, or so everyone thought. But when these captured German women braced for cruelty, what they got instead was kindness that left them speechless. April 1945. The war in Europe is almost over, but the smoke hasn't settled. Cities lie in ruins. Trains run no more. And in that silence, between bombings and surrender, a different kind of story was unfolding, one that didn't make it into the history books. This is the untold story of German women prisoners of war, who braced themselves for cruelty, only to be met with something they never expected: kindness. The harsh reality of war for women. World War II didn't just belong to the soldiers in trenches, or the men flying bombers. Women were pulled into its gravity too: nurses, clerks, signal operators, anti-aircraft assistants known as Flakhelferinnen. Many volunteered, others had no choice. On the Eastern Front, the reality was brutal. When Soviet troops pushed west, revenge often came disguised as victory. Entire towns suffered. Stories spread fast: rape, executions, humiliation. Women became symbols of the regime that had destroyed half of Europe. Against that backdrop, surrendering to the Americans felt like gambling with fate. Most expected the worst. Propaganda had taught them to. Captured. Fear and expectation. Imagine being 20 years old, wearing a faded Luftwaffe uniform that no longer fits, clutching an ID card that suddenly means nothing. You've walked for days. You haven't eaten since yesterday. The road ahead is lined with American tanks, and men in strange helmets. Nazi radio broadcasts had promised that the Allies would show no mercy, that German women would be paraded, abused, even executed. So as these women were rounded up, many broke down. Some refused to look the soldiers in the eye. Others whispered prayers under their breath. But then, something strange happened. Instead of rifles pointed in rage, they saw soldiers offering them water. Instead of shouting, they heard English voices asking, "Are you hurt?" One American GI tore open a ration pack and handed it to a trembling woman who hadn't tasted chocolate in months. Another gave away his jacket to a nurse shivering in the cold. They had prepared for punishment, not compassion. The unexpected act of kindness. At first, they didn't believe it. Some thought it was a trick. A few refused food, assuming it was poisoned. But as days passed, the pattern didn't change. American units, especially those following Eisenhower's Western advance, had orders to respect the Geneva Conventions. But for many soldiers, it wasn't just about orders. They saw tired young women, not enemies. Some reminded them of sisters back home. Letters and diaries later revealed quiet moments of humanity. An American medic patching a wound and saying softly, "You'll be all right, ma'am." A guard slipping extra bread through the barbed wire. A soldier teaching a German girl a few words of English, just to make her smile. These were small acts, fleeting, but in that environment, they were everything. Humanity amidst conflict. For the German women, this behavior created deep confusion. The enemy they'd been told to hate suddenly looked human and kind. Many couldn't make sense of it. Some later admitted, it was the first time they questioned everything they'd believed. And for the American soldiers, those moments left marks too. After years of fighting, of watching comrades fall, they were suddenly face to face with people who'd lost just as much. The war blurred. Enemies became faces. Historians sometimes call this microhumanity, the brief, quiet resistance to the machine of war. Beyond the barbed wire. After the surrender, many of these women were processed and sent to temporary camps. Conditions were still rough, overcrowded, limited food, but treatment remained largely humane. Months later, as they were repatriated to Germany, some carried photographs or scraps of paper with English names, the soldiers who had shown them mercy. Years later, a few even wrote letters of thanks. One woman, captured near Cologne, remembered a GI who gave her his own rations. She wrote, "I had nothing. He gave me a piece of America, kindness when I had none left." Conclusion. War strips people down to their rawest selves. It reveals cruelty, yes, but sometimes, it also exposes compassion so deep, it defies the moment. The story of the German women POWs and their American captors reminds us that even in history's darkest hours, humanity can still break through the smoke.